If you're an American urban planner watching this video, I just want to make this quick little disclaimer. I am not trying to degrade your life's work. I hope you can hear me, by the way. It's very windy outside, but I am not trying to degrade your life's work. As a matter of fact, before I dropped out of college in 2019, one of the majors that I heavily considered pursuing was urban planning. So I very easily could have been in your position trying to operate with the same limitations that you are operating with on a day-to-day basis. So listen, I have nothing but respect for you and the work that you're doing, because I know that things could be a lot worse. But after having spent 14 months living in Europe, in the Netherlands in particular, I'm also well aware that things could be a hell of a lot better. And in this video, I want to explain some of the reasons why American urban planning kind of sucks, especially compared to European cities, and especially compared to European cities in the Netherlands. Now, the first reason why American urban planning sucks is because the infrastructure is bad. The layout is bad. But here's the thing about that. It's not that urban planners are just inherently incompetent. Okay, urban planners are well educated here. You have to go to college to become an urban planner here. But they are working with very, very, very restrictive limitations when it comes to planning out cities. And what I mean by that is, basically here in the US, the reason why most neighborhoods look like this, where you literally only see houses and nothing else, there's no grocery store within the neighborhood, there's no dentist or whatever else people may need within the neighborhoods, is because of the zoning laws. Now, zoning laws vary from place to place. I want to say they're determined kind of at the local level. I could be wrong about that. I don't know, because I'm not an urban planner. What I do know is that it is literally illegal to create neighborhoods that are similar to European neighborhoods, meaning mixed use zoning. What is mixed use zoning? Mixed use zoning is exactly what it sounds like. Mixed use zoning is where you have residential, you have commercial, and you're able to integrate them within the same space. Here, and I don't know all of the specifics because again, I'm not an urban planner, but here, generally speaking, these have to remain separate. There are commercial areas and residential areas, and please correct me if I'm wrong or add more details in the comments. I'm just working with the information that I have. But all I know is that from a technical standpoint, urban planners literally, even if they wanted to, even if they spent 10 years studying abroad in the Netherlands and studying every single inch, every centimeter of Dutch cities, they could not take those principles back to the US and apply them, because the law literally doesn't allow for it. Now, it's my understanding that the reason why this is the case is because when a lot of these, let me actually walk this way so we can stay away from the major road. And just a side note, you know you're in Texas when you start seeing trucks like that. You start seeing those big trucks, you know you're back in Texas. But anyways, whenever cities like Dallas or Los Angeles were still developing, the automotive companies lobbied politicians to pass laws preventing mixed-use zoning and just generally making people car dependent. Of course, because it's in the best interest of automotive companies to have a population of people who are dependent on cars. Of course, it's in their best interest from a business standpoint. But from a collective well-being standpoint, it's not in anyone's best interest. But people simply don't know the trap that they're in. It's interesting because to say that we're the land of the free, there are a lot of hidden prisons that all of us are being forced to operate in, and that is just one of them. And listen, I know that things could be a lot worse than they are. America is not the worst place to be, But it hurts me to see the potential of America with so many talented people here being forced to operate with such pointless constraints. And listen, the reason why these issues don't exist to the same extent in East Coast cities like Boston or New York is because those cities were built up before cars were invented. So, in other words, this only really affects cities like Dallas, where they were essentially built up after the advent of the automobile. And again, I'm not an urban planner, so I don't know all the details, but I know enough to know that it's not right. It's not right that we should have to rely on vehicles to get from point A to point B. I don't know how long this video has been running for, but I've been walking around this neighborhood and you see there are only houses here. You don't see any cyclists, you don't really see any pedestrians, and that's for a reason. It's because the infrastructure is simply not there, because urban planners, civil engineers, everybody involved within that process of building these cities out are simply not allowed to do what's in the best interest of Americans. That said, if they suddenly changed the zoning laws, overnight and allowed for mixed-use development, I have a hot take, a contrarian take. I don't think that changing the zoning laws would actually solve the problem. And the reason why is because I think it actually has less to do with the technical restrictions and more to do with the collective American psyche. What do I mean by that? Well, in order for me to help you understand that, you need to understand how people operate overall, just psychologically. People tend to align their behavior with whatever gives them the most social status. And this is true of any culture, by the way, including European cultures, including Dutch culture, which is known to be rooted in humility. In the case of Dutch culture, humility is what brings status. That's what brings social status. Humility and just actively contributing to the well-being of the group, of the collective. Here in the US, people gain social status on the basis of individualistic behaviors. So in other words, people here don't receive status from riding their bicycles to help sustain the environment. There are a lot of people here that don't even believe that climate change is a thing. And I'm not even going to go into that because it's not even worth discussing. But the point that I'm making is that even if we had the infrastructure, even if we had the public transit, even if we had the bike lanes, I don't believe that people here would use it, because doing those things, at least based on, I saw a bee right there if you were wondering why I looked so spooked for a second, but people here understand that they are not going to be socially rewarded for doing what's in the best interest of the collective whole. And that is the actual root issue of this American urban planning problem, is that the people don't want that. The people don't want that kind of efficiency. They don't want it because it contradicts the behavioral patterns that warrant social status. Really think about this for a second. You can add the infrastructure. You can go about doing the whole induced demand thing, but it's not going to work. It's not going to work because the problem isn't the infrastructure. The problem is the people. The people are what drive the market. No pun intended. The people drive the market. And this is something that I've learned from being a content creator, being an entrepreneur, is that induced demand isn't really a thing. It's not really a thing. Because the only way to induce demand is through restriction. And restriction leads to revolution. Or maybe it doesn't, maybe I'm wrong. But as an American who has a generally good understanding of the American psyche, I don't think I'm wrong. I don't think I'm wrong about that. I don't think that people here would suddenly change their line of thinking, change their conditioning to conform to the external. I think that the external has to follow the internal. And Americans are in a position where they believe, I keep saying they as if I'm not an American, but a lot of Americans believe that riding the bus makes you less of a person. Riding your bike to the grocery store makes you a less competent person, or makes you appear less competent than somebody who drives a Mercedes-Benz to the grocery store. And you're going to the same grocery store, maybe even getting the same groceries, but it's more about the perception. And so how do we go about solving that problem? Well, this is a big part of the reason why I feel compelled to make videos like this, is because in order to solve the problem, first we must become aware that the problem even exists. And a lot of Americans are simply unaware of that aspect, that component of their psyche, and how it informs their behavioral patterns on a day-to-day basis. And how their behavioral patterns, as part of the collective macro behavioral patterns, inform the restrictions that the talented people that we have building our cities have to work with. We have to empower ourselves to empower them to have the freedom to give us a better life.